A woman walked in and asked if the aisle that trades was still accepting names. It was late enough that the store had begun to thin into silence. The overhead lights hummed with a faint, irregular pitch, and the refrigeration units along the back wall exhaled in slow, mechanical cycles. I was counting loose change behind the register when the door chimed. She stepped in without hesitation. Most people paused just a second to adjust to the light or scan for what they needed. She didn't. She walked directly toward me, her steps measured, quiet against the tile, as if she'd been here enough times to remember the distance. When she reached the counter, she didn't greet me. "Is the aisle that trades still accepting names?" Her voice was level, almost careful, like she was repeating something she had practiced saying. I blinked. "Sorry." She held my gaze for a moment, studying me in a way that felt less like curiosity and more like confirmation. "The aisle that trades," she said again. "Is it still open?" The air felt thinner. Not colder exactly, but less settled. The hum of the lights stretched into something higher, more fragile. "We don't have anything like that," I said. Came out automatically, the same tone I used when people asked for items we didn't carry. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. "You're new," she said. "I've been here a few months." "That's new enough." Her hands rested lightly on the counter. They didn't move. I glanced past her toward the aisles. Everything looked normal. Packaged snacks, canned goods. The narrow row near the back that led toward the storage door. Nothing out of place. "I think you've got the wrong store," I said. She turned her head slightly, looking past me now, toward the deeper part of the building. "It's not the wrong place," she said. "It just doesn't stay visible." Pause followed. Not empty, but held. "I'm going to check," she added. Before I could respond, she stepped away from the counter. Something about that felt wrong, not in an obvious way, but in how certain she was. Customers didn't move like that when they were unsure. They lingered, asked again, looked for signs. She didn't. I left the register and followed her. The store felt longer than it should have. The lighting grew dimmer as we moved toward the back, the fixtures spaced farther apart, the hum of the refrigerators thickening into a low, steady pressure. She slowed near the last aisle, the one we used for overstock and items that didn't have a proper section. I'd been down it dozens of times, but standing there now, it didn't feel the same. The shelves seemed slightly misaligned, not visibly crooked, just off. The spacing between products felt inconsistent, as if they'd been placed without reference to each other. The light above flickered once, then steadied into a duller glow. "This is it," she said. "It's just storage," I replied. "Look again." Her voice had lowered. The sound didn't seem to travel far, as if the aisle absorbed it. I stepped closer. First, nothing changed. Then I noticed the gaps. Not empty spaces, something stranger. Places where shelves should continue, but didn't. Where labels stopped mid-row, as if something had interrupted their structure. The farther down I looked, the less certain the end of the aisle became. It didn't stop where I knew it should. The back wall felt distant, or absent. A faint chill brushed along my arms. "What is this?" I asked. She didn't turn. "An exchange," she said. "It takes something that belongs to you and gives something back." "What kind of exchange?" She faced me then. "Names." The word settled heavily. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "It doesn't have to," she replied. "It only has to work." A sound came from deeper in the aisle. Soft, subtle, like paper shifting against itself. I glanced past her. The space seemed to narrow slightly, then widen again as if adjusting. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I've been here before." The certainty in her voice pressed against something uneasy in me. "You came back," I said. "Yes." "Why?" She held my gaze. "Because it's not finished." The air cooled further. I could see her breath now, faint and brief. "What does it take?" I asked. "My name," she said. "Or yours. Or anyone's." "And what does it give?" She hesitated just enough to matter. "What you ask for." The answer felt incomplete. "What did you ask for?" I said. Her eyes shifted slightly, not quite focusing on me anymore. "Something I lost," she said. "And it gave it back?" "Yes." A pause. "But not in the way I expected." The sound in the aisle grew clearer. Still quiet, but closer. "What do you mean?" She turned slightly toward the shelves. "It gave it back exactly as it was," she said. "Every detail, every memory, every habit." Her hands tightened faintly at her sides. "But it wasn't mine anymore." The words settled into something colder. "You're talking about a person," I said. She didn't answer. "The aisle doesn't trade objects," she said instead. "It trades what a name holds." The space behind her seemed to shift, edges softening. "What happens to the name?" I asked. "It takes it," she said. "All of it." A slow understanding began to form. "If you give it your name," I said, "you lose yourself." "Not all at once," she replied. "That's why people think it's safe." The light dimmed slightly. "It starts small," she continued. "Preferences, habits, the way you choose things without thinking." Her voice remained steady, but something in it felt worn. "Then it takes more. Memories, reactions, the way you recognize yourself." I swallowed. "And eventually?" She met my eyes. "There's nothing left that belongs to you." Silence filled the aisle. "And you came back," I said. "Yes." "Why?" She turned fully toward the deeper part of the aisle. "Because I gave it the wrong name." The words pressed in. "What does that mean?" "It wasn't mine to give," she said. Understanding came slowly. "You gave it someone else's name." She didn't deny it. "And it gave them back to you," I said. "Yes. But not really." "No." The sound in the aisle shifted again. Closer now. "So why come back?" I asked. "Because it's still taking," she said. The shelves seemed to stretch slightly as she stepped forward. "The exchange isn't complete," she continued. "It keeps adjusting until it balances." A faint pressure built in the air. "I have to correct it," she said. "How?" She paused. Then, quietly, "By giving it my own name." "You said that takes everything." "It already is," she replied. Something in her expression felt incomplete, not visibly, but in a way that resisted focus. "I can feel it going," she said, "pieces at a time." The aisle deepened as she moved, the light folding inward around her. "What happens after?" I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She stopped a few steps in. The darkness there wasn't complete, but it absorbed detail. Edges blurred. She took a breath, then spoke. Her name. I heard the shape of it, but not the sound. It slipped away as soon as it formed, as if the aisle refused to hold it. The space shifted. A subtle, final adjustment. The temperature dropped sharply, then steadied. The hum of the store returned. She was gone. Not suddenly. Not violently. Just absent. The aisle looked normal again. Narrow. Finite. Ending where it should. I stood there for a long moment before stepping forward. Nothing changed. No distortion. No sound. Just shelves. I walked back to the front. The lights felt brighter. The air warmer. The door remained closed. No sign she had been there. At the counter, something small caught my attention. A slip of paper. I didn't remember placing it there. I picked it up. A single name was written on it. Neat, controlled, familiar. I stared at it, waiting for recognition to settle. Didn't. The hum of the lights deepened slightly. From somewhere in the store, a faint sound echoed. Soft, patient, waiting. I looked toward the back. The aisle stood still. Unremarkable. Exactly where it had always been. And as I held the paper in my hand, I realized I couldn't remember if the name written there was hers or mine. The store's intercom whispered my name, but in someone else's voice. It came through soft enough that I almost missed it, slipping between the hum of the refrigerators and the low flicker of the lights overhead. I looked up from the register. The store was empty. Aisles clean, front glass reflecting the dim parking lot beyond. Nothing moving, nothing out of place. The intercom crackled once, a dry breath of static. Then silence. I waited a few seconds, listening. Nothing followed. I exhaled, slow, and looked back down at the counter. The receipt printer ticked quietly beside me, still warm from the last transaction nearly an hour ago. Midnight had passed without notice. It always did here. The shift stretched differently after that. Time thinned. I rubbed my thumb along the edge of the counter, grounding myself in something steady. The intercom hadn't been used all night. It wasn't supposed to be used at all, really. The system was old, wired into the ceiling, tied to a back office no one accessed anymore. The manager said it still worked, but there was no reason to test it. I had never heard it turn on. Another crackle, sharper this time. I looked up again. A faint hiss filled the air above me, barely there, like breath caught in the wiring. Then, my name, spoken carefully, slowly, but wrong. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't mechanical either. Not flat or distorted. It was familiar, in a way that didn't settle. I stood still behind the counter, waiting for my body to react properly. Didn't. The voice hadn't shouted, hadn't called out. It had whispered, as if it expected me to be listening. The speakers went quiet again. The store returned to its normal sounds. Low, steady, contained. I stepped out from behind the counter. The tile felt colder than before. "Hello," I said, the word falling flat. No response. The aisles stretched ahead in neat rows, products aligned under flickering light. A faint buzz ran through the ceiling fixtures, uneven, almost rhythmic. I moved slowly down the center aisle, glancing left and right as I passed. Everything looked the same. It should have felt reassuring. Didn't. Halfway down, I stopped. Something in the spacing felt off. The shelves on either side seemed slightly farther apart than they should be. Not enough to notice immediately, just enough that walking through felt different, like the distance between steps had changed. I turned, looking back toward the counter. It looked farther away. I frowned. That wasn't right. Another crackle overhead. I froze. The intercom clicked on again. A breath. Then my name. The same voice. Closer this time. Not louder. Just nearer. I felt it behind my ears, not above them. As if it had shifted position, moved through the store without using the speakers. I turned slowly, scanning the aisles. "Who's there?" I said. The question sounded smaller than I intended. The voice didn't answer, but something else did. A faint shift in the lighting. The aisle ahead dimmed slightly, while the one behind me brightened. The hum of the refrigerators deepened, stretching into a low, steady pressure that filled the space between sounds. I took a step back, then another. The floor felt uneven, not physically, but in the way my body registered it. Like I was walking on something that wasn't fixed. I reached the counter again and rested my hands against it, pressing down. Solid, unchanged. I stayed there for a moment, breathing. Then I looked up at the security monitor. For small screens showed different angles of the store. Front entrance, back aisle, beverage section, register. Everything appeared normal. Except, I leaned closer. The back aisle camera showed the shelves. But they weren't aligned. They curved slightly, bending inward at the center, like the aisle was narrowing. I turned, looking directly at it. It wasn't curved. It was straight. I looked back at the monitor. Still curved. The intercom clicked again. This time, the static lingered longer. A slow inhale. Then my name. Spoken differently. The same voice, but adjusted. Closer to something I recognized. A memory surfaced, quick, incomplete. A voice from years ago. Someone calling me from another room. I tried to hold on to it. It slipped. The sound faded before I could place it. I swallowed. "What do you want?" I asked. The question echoed slightly, as if the space around me had widened. No answer. The lights above flickered. Once, twice, then settled into a dimmer state. The edges of the store softened. Not visibly, just enough that focusing took effort. I turned slowly, trying to orient myself. The aisles didn't feel as fixed anymore. Their positions had shifted. Slightly. Enough that I couldn't remember if they had always been like this. I walked toward the beverage section. The refrigerators hummed louder as I approached, their glass doors reflecting the aisle behind me. I stopped in front of one. My reflection stared back. Still, but not quite aligned. There was a delay. When I moved, it followed a fraction of a second later. I froze. The reflection didn't. It adjusted slightly after me, as if catching up. The intercom whispered my name again. This time, it came from the direction of the reflection. Not above, not behind. From there, I stepped back. The reflection matched me. Perfectly now. The delay gone. I turned away. The store felt quieter. Too quiet. The hum of the refrigerators had softened, stretched thin. Even the lights seemed to flicker less, as if everything was conserving movement. Waiting, I walked back toward the counter, or where I thought it was. The distance felt longer, the layout less certain. I passed an aisle that I didn't remember stocking. Boxes lined the shelves, plain, unlabeled. I stopped. Had those always been there? I tried to recall. The memory didn't come. I moved on. At the front, the counter came into view again. The register sat where it should. The receipt printer. The small rack of gum and batteries. Unchanged. I stepped behind it and exhaled. For a moment, everything felt stable again. Then I looked down. There was a name written on the counter. Faint, like it had been traced into the surface with something soft. I stared at it. It looked familiar. I tried to read it. The letters shifted slightly as I focused. Not moving, just refusing to settle into something I could hold. The intercom clicked. A long, low breath filled the store. Then my name again. Clearer, closer, in that same voice. Only now it was almost right. Almost mine. Something tightened in my chest. I tried to remember how my name sounded in my own voice. Came slowly, incomplete, like recalling a word from another language. The sound slipped at the edges. The lights dimmed further. The aisles stretched. I could see them from the counter now, longer than before, extending deeper into shadow. The security monitor flickered. One of the screens went dark. Then another. Only the front entrance remained. I looked up. The glass door reflected the store interior. But it wasn't empty. There was someone standing behind the counter. Still, facing forward. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The intercom whispered my name again. This time it was correct. Perfect. Exactly as I would have said it. The reflection in the glass moved. Not with me. Independently. It tilted its head slightly, as if listening. The lights flickered once more. Then steadied. The aisles stopped shifting. The hum returned to normal. Everything settled. I stood behind the counter, hands resting on its surface. The name carved there looked clearer now. Legible. Familiar. I read it and understood it. The intercom clicked one last time. A soft inhale. Then my name, spoken gently, in my own voice. The lights above me dimmed in response. Just slightly, as if acknowledging it. And from somewhere deeper in the store, something shifted. Not moving, but making space.